Hello everyone, and welcome to my Beyond the Gates official channel. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. OMG. In a shocking, emotional, edge-of-your-seat turn that no one in Fairmont Crest ever saw coming, Beyond the Gates delivers one of its most unforgettable episodes yet as Nicole Richardson uncovers the devastating truth that flips an entire family's world upside down. The cancer test results that sent Anita Richardson spiraling toward death were wrong, and Anita never had cancer at all. A revelation that detonates like a bomb across generations, relationships, and buried secrets, beginning with Nicole pacing the sterile hospital corridor long after visiting hours have ended, clutching a thin manila folder she wasn't meant to see, her instincts screaming as loudly as her heart pounds when a single word on the lab header doesn't match what she remembers, prompting her to demand answers from a nervous lab technician whose shaking hands betray the nightmare lurking beneath clerical smiles. And as Nicole pushes, presses, and refuses to back down, the horrifying truth begins to surface. Piece by piece, Anita's biopsy sample was mislabeled, switched during a chaotic intake night when the lab was understaffed, overworked, and careless, and the malignant cells that destroyed months of hope, drained bank accounts, fractured marriages, and reduced a once indomitable matriarch to a shadow of herself never belonged to Anita at all. Meanwhile, Anita lies at home surrounded by get-well cards that feel like cruel jokes, her body weakened by aggressive chemotherapy that was never necessary, her hair gone, her spirit cracked, whispering to God that she's ready to rest because she can't fight anymore, unaware that salvation is racing toward her while guilt and rage chase just as fast. And when Nicole finally bursts through Anita's front door with tears streaming down her face and breath hitching in sobs she can barely control, the words fall like thunder. "Mom, you don't have cancer." And time itself seems to freeze as Anita stares blankly, unable to process hope after months of preparing for death. Her first reaction not joy but confusion, then anger. Then a raw, animal scream of grief for everything that's been stolen from her, a moment so powerful it silences the room as every family member present realizes they've been mourning a lie. Across town, Vernon stiffens when he hears the news, knowing his financial donation to fast-track Anita's original test results may have pressured an already broken system, while Sharon's face drains of color as she remembers the lab director she blackmailed months earlier to bury a different scandal. Suddenly terrified her past manipulations may have indirectly caused this catastrophic error, and Tracy, ever the truth seeker, immediately smells corruption, vowing to expose whoever is responsible even if it destroys the hospital, the family, or the entire elite social structure protecting Fairmont Crest's untouchables. Nicole, consumed by guilt for trusting the system and for pushing Anita into experimental treatments out of desperation, spirals emotionally as flashbacks haunt her. Anita vomiting in hospital bathrooms, signing a living will with trembling hands, whispering final wishes she never should have had to make, and the weight of it nearly breaks her as she confronts the oncologist who delivers a hollow apology laced with legal language, igniting Nicole's fury as she realizes medicine has rules for protecting institutions, not souls. The fallout spreads like wildfire as Anita's diagnosis reversal leaks, turning her into a symbol of medical injustice. The press circling, lawsuits forming, donors panicking, and hospital administrators scrambling to contain a scandal that threatens to expose decades of negligence, while Anita herself struggles with a complicated mix of relief and rage, snapping at loved ones one moment and sobbing in Nicole's arms the next, mourning the version of herself who entered treatment strong and fearless and emerged broken for no reason at all. Relationships fracture under the strain. Ted blames himself for not questioning harder. Shanice wrestles with survivor's guilt after postponing her own health scare to support Anita, and June confronts Martin, accusing him of exploiting Anita's illness for political sympathy, forcing him to face how close he came to profiting off a lie. The emotional crescendo peaks when Anita returns to the hospital not as a patient, but as a force of reckoning, standing bald, defiant, and unafraid in the same hallway where she once received her death sentence, demanding accountability as staff avert their eyes, and when Nicole stands beside her mother, holding her hand, the symbolism is unmistakable. This is no longer about illness, but about truth, power, and the cost of silence. Yet the most haunting twist comes when a mysterious call reaches Nicole late that night. An anonymous voice whispering that the switch wasn't an accident at all, that someone deliberately altered the samples to hide another patient's terminal diagnosis, plunging Nicole into a new nightmare as she realizes Anita's stolen months may be part of a much darker conspiracy, setting the stage for explosive revelations, moral reckonings, and an unforgettable chapter in Beyond the Gates where hope returns, but innocence is lost forever. And as Anita looks into the mirror touching her bare scalp with quiet resolve, she makes a vow that echoes through Fairmont Crest. She survived a death sentence she never deserved, and now she's coming for the truth, no matter who stands in her way. The story surges forward with even greater intensity as the truth about Anita's misdiagnosis refuses to stay contained, spilling into every corner of Fairmont Crest and forcing long-buried sins into the light. Because once hope is restored, justice demands a reckoning, and Anita Richardson, once the quiet center of her family, begins to transform into something fiercer, sharper, and far more dangerous to those who thought her illness made her weak, starting with the sleepless nights where she jolts awake from nightmares of hospital beeps and cold drips, her hands shaking as she realizes that even though the cancer is gone, the trauma remains lodged deep in her bones, while Nicole watches helplessly from the doorway, grappling with the horrifying realization that saving her mother doesn't erase the months of suffering she unknowingly helped orchestrate, a guilt so heavy it begins to fracture her sense of self as a daughter, a professional, and a woman who believed in systems that failed the person she loved most. Meanwhile, the hospital launches a public relations campaign filled with rehearsed apologies and vague promises of internal review, but Anita sees right through it, refusing settlement offers and non-disclosure agreements that arrive thick with zeros and dripping with condescension, declaring she doesn't want their money. She wants names, faces, and the truth, a stance that shocks even Tracy, who has built her entire life on exposing corruption but never expected Anita to become her fiercest ally. As Tracy digs deeper, she uncovers a chilling pattern of mislabeled tests, silenced families, and sudden settlements that suggest Anita's case is not an isolated tragedy, but part of a systemic rot protected by powerful donors and political favors, including whispers of Vernon's involvement and Sharon's manipulative reach, placing them directly in the crosshairs of an investigation that threatens to obliterate their carefully curated lives. Nicole, torn between loyalty to family and her growing suspicion that the error may have been intentional, confronts Vernon in a tense, claustrophobic exchange where half-truths hang thicker than lies, his calm unraveling just enough to confirm her worst fears, while Sharon's brittle composure cracks entirely when a former lab assistant comes forward, claiming she was ordered to alter records the night Anita's samples were processed. A confession that sends shockwaves through the community and raises the terrifying question of who the original cancer diagnosis was meant for, and whether that patient is now dying untreated. The emotional weight crescendos when Anita insists on meeting the family of the unknown patient, only to discover the diagnosis belonged to a young single mother whose worsening symptoms were dismissed for months, a revelation that devastates Anita and ignites a firestorm of moral outrage, as she realizes her suffering, as horrific as it was, may have cost someone else their life, binding her fate to a stranger in a way she never asked for but now cannot ignore. Relationships across Beyond the Gates strain and splinter under the pressure. Ted and Shanice clash over whether justice is worth the emotional toll. June distances herself from Martin after learning he suppressed early rumors to protect his campaign, and Eva, already fragile from Isaiah's earlier betrayal, spirals as she questions whether truth even exists in a world where facts can be rewritten with a signature. Nicole reaches her breaking point in a raw, devastating moment where she confesses to Anita that part of her had already begun grieving, imagining life without her mother, and the admission shatters them both, forcing an uncomfortable but necessary confrontation with love, fear, and the selfish instinct to prepare for loss. An exchange that ends not in anger but in tears and a renewed vow to rebuild what was nearly destroyed. The climax looms when Anita testifies at a closed-door ethics hearing, her voice steady but trembling with restrained fury as she recounts every humiliating, painful detail of her treatment. The room silent as she removes her wig and lets them see the physical proof of their failure, a moment so powerful it turns public opinion overnight and transforms Anita into a reluctant symbol of resilience and resistance. Yet just as justice seems within reach, a final twist lands like a dagger. The anonymous caller resurfaces, revealing that the sample switch was ordered by someone within Anita's own social circle, someone she trusted implicitly, sending Nicole into a panic as she races to uncover the truth before evidence disappears and lives are further destroyed, setting up a breathtaking next chapter where forgiveness, revenge, and accountability collide. And Beyond the Gates reminds viewers with devastating clarity that survival is only the beginning, because living with the truth and what it demands may be the hardest battle of all. The aftermath grows even darker and more emotionally charged as the secret behind Anita's false diagnosis inches closer to the surface, because in Fairmont Crest, truth never arrives without dragging devastation in its wake, and as Nicole follows the anonymous lead through shadowed parking garages, late-night phone calls, and whispered warnings to let it go, she begins to understand that her mother's survival has disrupted a carefully engineered lie that powerful people were counting on. Staying buried forever, a realization that leaves her shaken as she uncovers security footage showing Sharon entering the lab wing on the night of the sample switch, her face masked by composure but her body language betraying urgency, desperation, and fear. And when Nicole confronts her with the evidence, Sharon doesn't deny being there, she only insists it was to protect the family. A justification that detonates the fragile peace and confirms that Anita's suffering was collateral damage in a much larger, colder game. Anita, meanwhile, wrestles with a new kind of pain as her body begins to recover, while her identity remains fractured, struggling to recognize the woman staring back at her in the mirror, torn between gratitude for a second chance and an all-consuming rage that simmers just beneath the surface, pushing her to the brink when she learns the young mother whose diagnosis was stolen has taken a sudden turn for the worse, prompting Anita to visit her in the hospital and deliver a devastating apology that becomes one of the most heartbreaking moments in the series, as two strangers bound by medical betrayal clasp hands and grieve the life that might have been saved if greed and fear hadn't intervened. The scandal explodes publicly when Tracy leaks the evidence, triggering federal investigations, mass resignations, and a media storm that paints Fairmont Crest's elite as monsters hiding behind charity galas and smiling photo ops, while Vernon scrambles to distance himself, only to find his financial fingerprints all over the hospital's expedited testing fund, exposing him as a man who bent systems for convenience without caring who might break beneath them. Relationships crumble under the weight of exposure. Ted turns away from Vernon in disgust. Shanice questions her future in a town built on lies, and June finally leaves Martin, unable to reconcile the man she loved with the politician who chose silence over justice. Marking a rare but powerful moment where integrity wins over ambition, Nicole reaches her lowest point when she realizes that Sharon's actions, though monstrous, were motivated by a secret that ties directly to Nicole herself, revealing that Sharon altered the samples to hide evidence of a genetic condition that could destroy Nicole's career and future. A revelation that leaves Nicole shattered as she grapples with the unbearable truth that her mother suffered so she could remain untouched, forcing Nicole to confront the ugliest question of all: how much pain is one life worth? The emotional crescendo arrives when Anita learns the full truth and confronts Sharon in a blistering showdown that strips away years of polite civility, as Anita declares that survival does not equal forgiveness and that protecting someone by destroying another is not love, but cruelty disguised as sacrifice. A confrontation that ends with Sharon breaking down, confessing everything, and being led away in handcuffs as the weight of her choices finally catches up to her. Yet the story refuses to end in simple victory, because Anita's health remains uncertain as doctors assess the long-term damage caused by unnecessary treatment, leaving the family once again facing an unknown future, though this time armed with truth instead of lies. And as the season closes, Anita stands beside Nicole at sunrise, watching the gates of Fairmont Crest open to a new day, quietly acknowledging that while cancer did not claim her life, betrayal almost did, and that healing will take far more than reversed test results. It will take accountability, courage, and the strength to rebuild a world where truth is no longer negotiable, cementing this arc of Beyond the Gates as one of its most powerful, heartbreaking, and unforgettable chapters yet. The story refuses to slow down, instead unfolding into an even more intricate and emotionally devastating tapestry as the consequences of Anita's false cancer diagnosis ripple outward, touching lives that once seemed only loosely connected, because in Beyond the Gates, survival does not bring peace, it brings reckoning. And in the days following Sharon's arrest, Fairmont Crest becomes a town divided, with whispered conversations behind manicured hedges and strained smiles at charity luncheons where everyone wonders who might be next to fall, while Anita becomes both a symbol of injustice and an uncomfortable reminder of how easily privilege can rewrite reality. A role she never wanted but now carries with grim determination, Nicole, hollowed out by the revelation that her mother's suffering was engineered to protect her future, spirals into a quiet self-destruction, questioning every achievement she's ever earned and every door that opened too easily, haunted by the possibility that her life has been built on someone else's pain. And when she finally confesses this fear to Ted, her voice cracking as she admits she no longer knows who she is without the lie, Ted responds not with comfort but with brutal honesty, telling her that guilt without action is just another form of cowardice, words that sting but ultimately propel Nicole toward a new purpose, to make sure what happened to Anita can never happen again. Anita, meanwhile, begins the grueling process of physical recovery, attending follow-up appointments where doctors speak in cautious tones about nerve damage, hormonal disruption, and lingering fatigue caused by treatments she never needed, each medical term landing like a fresh betrayal. Yet instead of retreating inward, Anita channels her anger into advocacy, meeting with families of other victims and listening to their stories with a quiet empathy forged through shared trauma, discovering that her voice carries weight precisely because she endured what so many were forced to suffer in silence. Across town, Vernon's empire begins to crumble as subpoenas stack up and longtime allies distance themselves, exposing the fragility of power built on influence rather than integrity. And when Tracy confronts him with evidence that his donations created the environment that allowed the sample switch to occur, Vernon finally cracks, admitting he never meant for anyone to get hurt, a confession that Tracy dismantles with surgical precision by reminding him that intent does not absolve impact. A moment that leaves Vernon staring at the wreckage of his legacy with nothing left to justify it. Emotional fault lines deepen as families reckon with their complicity. Shanice struggles with rage at a system she once trusted. Eva lashes out at anyone who suggests forgiveness. And June, newly independent and bruised by disillusionment, finds unexpected strength in standing beside Anita at public hearings, her transformation symbolizing the quiet power of choosing truth over comfort. The narrative reaches another haunting peak when the young mother whose diagnosis was delayed finally passes away, a loss that devastates Anita and cements her resolve, leading to a candlelight vigil that becomes one of the most visually striking and emotionally raw moments of the season, as Anita addresses the crowd not as a victim but as a survivor carrying the weight of another woman's stolen chance, her words cutting through the night with clarity and sorrow as she vows that no one else will be sacrificed on the altar of convenience and fear. Nicole, inspired and ashamed in equal measure, steps into the spotlight. For the first time, publicly acknowledging the role her proximity to power played in shielding the truth and pledging to fund an independent oversight foundation in Anita's name, a gesture that doesn't erase the past but signals a commitment to accountability that surprises both critics and allies. Yet even as justice inches closer, Beyond the Gates delivers one final, chilling twist when evidence surfaces that the hospital scandal extends beyond Fairmont Crest, hinting at a statewide network of suppressed diagnoses and altered records, suggesting that Anita's story may be only the beginning of something far larger and far more dangerous. And as the season fades out on Anita closing the gates behind her after another long day of testimony, her silhouette strong against the setting sun, the message is unmistakable. Anita Richardson did not survive cancer, but she survived something just as lethal. And now that she knows the truth, she will never again allow silence to masquerade as mercy, setting the stage for a future where redemption is hard-earned, power is questioned, and no secret remains safe beyond the gates.